Good day, folks. It's a pleasure to see you. My name is Dustin Cormier, and this is a continuation of our series discussing the Tropical Vedic Big Three. Now, this is a fun little made-up thing. There's no big three in Tropical Vedic Astrology. There's really not a big three in any astrology, but there's a pop fad going on where people say the big three. It's your rising sign, sun sign, moon sign. In Tropical Vedic Astrology, we are conveying it through the Atmakaraka, the Swamsha, and the moon's nakshatra. These, my buddy Corey Dowds from Eye of the Veda kind of kick-started this off. And I wanted to be a part of it, and so I'm here to describe this series. Today in particular, in this video, we're discussing the Swamsha. Now, all funniness and fun aside, the Swamsha is considered to be a really deep key understanding in Tropical Vedic Astrology. It's found by taking your Atmakaraka and looking at where its position is in the Navamsha chart, one of the divisional charts, where you split the 30 degrees of a sign, a zodiac sign, up into 9 pieces, and it creates a vibratory resonance with the soul. And the planet's position in that Navamsha chart, specifically the Atmakaraka's position, is going to tell us a lot about who we are, a lot about what the kind of struggles we can expect to have, what those struggles mean from a soul perspective. There's a whole deep understanding of this Swamsha position that we're going to talk a little bit about today. Now, if you haven't already seen my video describing how to calculate the Swamsha, you can find that on my channel. It's the most recent video that I did outside of this one, or at least it should be. It might be, I might put it in a succession after another video. Either way, it was only done just recently. And we're going to talk a little bit how to calculate it in this video just as a roundup. But today we're discussing the Swamsha. We're discussing what this thing's all about, what are its roots, why is it so important. Now, if you're digging what I've been doing here in my work, feel free to check out dustincormier.com, and there you can see more of my work, more of my literature, more of everything that is coming out in my world, and you'll get updates on the things that I have happening. So feel free to check that out and join my email list. Then you can be informed and hear what's happening in my world. So let's get started. In this video, I intend to go through some guts of the Swamsha. Now, we could go very deep with it, and I do intend to, but within some kind of reason. YouTube only likes it when I have videos that are only so long. So let's discuss what we can. Parashara and Jaimini are the two sages that represent the oldest, most fundamental roots of the Vedic jyotish tradition. Parashara is said to have come first. Someone like the Western Plato came before Aristotle. Although these two, Maharishi Parashara and Jaimini Rishi, these two could have been contemporaries. They might have actually been like Plato and Aristotle. But Aristotle took after Plato, and Jaimini took after Parashara. That's how it's generally conveyed. Now, Parashara channeled his famous Brihat Parashara Horashastra. It's his big, long exposition that is the first fingerprint of the channeling of rishis of what we call astrology in the Indian tradition. And this was done perhaps 3,500 to 6,000 years ago. So it's 1,500 BC to 4,000 BC. It's kind of a wide window. It's hard to say when this man would have lived. And, like so many things in the Vedic tradition, it's cloudy in terms of what scientific evidence we have for such things. But it kind of doesn't matter in the tradition. What matters is the heat from the fire of the torch and the candle that has been carried forth. Now, Parashara's work is this big, broad work that's been handed down for thousands of years. Now, it's been noted that Jaimini's signature is found in certain chapters of Parashara's work, the Brihat Parashara Horashastra, particularly chapters 8, 11, 29 to 33, 45, like, and many others. But yeah, what really probably happened here is that Parashara did his work, and then Jaimini focused and took a focused, narrowed take on specific parts of Parashara's broad fundamental work. Parashara is all-encompassing. Jaimini's system is quite unique. It's focusing on an ingenious way of understanding the horoscope. A good astrologer should understand and marry these two. So you can use Parashara. Usually Parashara is more psychological for counseling, for the whole chart, whereas Jaimini is a little bit more concrete. It tends to tell you about what to expect in career, in love. The predictions are a little bit sharper and concrete in the Jaimini tradition. Now, Jaimini is its own whole thing. And really, to get an understanding of the basis of Jaimini, one of the big ones is Rashi aspects, which is something that most of us aren't used to. I don't do them too much on my channel. I don't do too much Jaimini because it is so cryptic, but I plan to eventually. Now, one of the fundamental grounds of this Jaimini dude, who took his own way in the world of Indian astrology, he conveys the planets relating to days of the week, which relate to his Jaimini Karakas. So there is this flowing system here. Now, these are called Karakas. Just to give a quick little spin-thrift of what is kind of happening here. The Karakas are what are called, Chara means changeable. So the Karakas are different for every person. How it's described is the number one is the Atmakaraka, relates to the sun, because the sun is also the Atmakaraka naturally. Atma means soul, and a Karaka is a signifier for something. So the Atmakaraka is going to be a planet that's like the sun, which is the center of everything. It's like another sun in the chart. And it is found by discovering which planet in the birth chart has the highest degrees in its sign. This is part of this ingenious way that Jaimini understood astrology. It's one of those things where it's like, I don't know where and why this works, but in our tradition, we observe it and go, wow, boy, does it ever work. So the Atmakaraka, planet number one, has the highest degrees in the chart. This is not including Rahu, not including Ketu, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, or the asteroids. The Atmakaraka is almost like the central pivot of the chart. It's like a recurring planet that we almost reincarnate as. It's like our core planet that we reincarnate as every time. And it's the planet with the highest degrees in the chart. Now, there are other Jaimini planets. The planet with the second highest degrees is called the Atmaya Karaka, which relates to the moon. The third highest degree planet is the Patri Karaka. You can go all through these all the way down to the Dara Karaka, which is the planet with the lowest degrees in its sign. If you've got a planet that's at like mine is Saturn. I've got Saturn at 1 degree of Aquarius. So Saturn is my Dara Karaka. And it's interesting that Saturn is related to the natural Dara Karaka. There's those kind of harmonies can happen. If the sun is your highest degree planet in the chart, it adds a little bit more sparkle to it. These kind of harmonies work in astrology in general when things line up in this way. But I digress. The Dara Karaka relates to the 7th house in relationships in a way as well. So keep that in mind. That's why Ernst Wilhelm says the Dara Karaka is your spouse. Now that's just what the Jaimini Karakas are all about. Now, let's start getting into the Swamsha, because we only use the Atmakaraka, the planet with the highest degree, the degrees in the chart. We only use the Atmakaraka when we're figuring out the Swamsha. Now, in order to understand it, the mysteries of the Navamsha really are a bit of an enigma. It's one of those things. It's one of those channeled gifts from the Vedic tradition. We fold our hands, observe it working, and we bow to the rishis who discovered it. You know, it's like, why does the Navamsha work the way it does? You know, why do we count the portions at the cardinal signs? You'll see a little bit, you know, you'd see more of that in the video where I discuss how to calculate the Navamsha positions. I'm just checking that you guys can see me. Looks like you can. Om Shri Parashara Namaha. You know, thank you to those who have passed down this knowledge before us. So Parashara would have been the guy who laid the foundation for these divisional charts, including the Navamsha, the Shastyamsha, the D60, the D10, the D3. Parashara figured these things out. Now, whoever between Parashara and Jaimini carved out the Swamsha is kind of debatable. It's probably Parashara. What we know is that they both, Parashara and Jaimini, right, that's these two guys, both of them used this Swamsha thing. But Jaimini is the one who expanded on it and perfected it. The Swamsha is really a part of Jaimini's world. And it's worth noting for those of us who are interested in going into this world, you have to understand that it's a bit like sun sign astrology. There's so much more to astrology than just the sun sign that you've read in the newspaper. Similarly, there's much more to Jaimini's Swamsha than just knowing your Swamsha sign. We're being a bit faddish by saying these, you know, the Tropical Vedic big three, right? You know, we're kind of having fun with a sort of fad by doing this. But let me give the caveat here that, you know, for those who are really interested in following through with deep training with Tropical Vedic Astrology, Jaimini is a whole world in itself. There's a way to understand techniques to use in seeing positions from the Swamsha that give certain predictive and concrete results that are a little bit less willy-nilly than what we're doing here. I don't want to give what we're doing here, I don't want to make it sound like it's not useful, because the Swamsha is still regarded as a staple pillar in the soul. And I highly invite you to find out for yourself what this Swamsha, what your own Swamsha means for you. And I'm sure that you're going to. Now, I'm going to give you some homework for yourself, especially with Brooke from Star Oracles, so you can read about yourself what this thing's all about. But in this video, I want to give some foundations for what's going on here. Now, the sage Jaimini places a lot of significance on the Swamsha in determining core character traits and spiritual inclinations. Jaimini uses the Swamsha as the foundation for other techniques in Jaimini astrology, which provide insights into career, authorship, home, marriage, and more. If you're interested in learning all these techniques yourself, you can do so at astrology-videos.com, and that is, of course, the website of Ernst Wilhelm. In Tropical Vedic Astrology tradition of today, Ernst Wilhelm is regarded by many to be the leading voice in understanding how to interpret the ancient wisdoms contained in Vedic jyotish from a tropical-based point of view. So you can check him out on YouTube or see his ever-expanding library by going to his website, astrology-videos.com. Highly recommend it. He's the guy where we're getting all this information from about the Swamsha, the Atmakarakas, what they mean, and he's the place to go if you want to go even deeper. Now, a lovely lady who I know as being a fellow Tropical Vedic astrologer. She's a student of Ernst Wilhelm. Her name is Brooke. Her website is called staroracles.com. So you can also find her at youtube.com/@staroracles. Her website is a tireless resource of information about the Atmakaraka and the Swamsha, all culled through her own research of the works of Ernst Wilhelm. I highly recommend it for more detail about these positions in your own chart. You can find out about your own Atmakaraka as well as your own Swamsha. There are also other articles. There's a great one by Nicole Brenny that you can look up on Google. And I will be discussing some of these as time goes on. This is just a foundation video. Now, even without using these other techniques, the deep techniques of Jaimini, you get a lot of information about someone just knowing their Swamsha Rashi. That's the Swamsha is not only the sign in the Navamsha chart, but it actually flows into your birth chart. The Swamsha shows what traits you're maturing throughout life and the degree of ease or torment you might experience. And even when it's very well placed, you will always be experiencing this torment and this ease in certain ways. Jaimini uses the word pancha in regards to the Swamsha, and this pancha relates to 5. It's a word meaning afflicted or tormented. Not that 5 is terribly bad, there is a logic behind it, but for this reason, the word pancha relates to afflicted or tormented here. And so the Swamsha represents a lot of qualities we are maturing through in order to obtain spiritual and soul fulfillment. There's an element of duality with the Swamsha, which relates to an integration between the Swamsha sign and its opposite sign. If you're a Virgo Swamsha like me, all things Pisces are going to be very important to you. You'll find yourself being attracted to people with Pisces, with lots of Pisces energy, stelliums in Pisces, South Node in Pisces, Swamsha in Pisces. Anybody with Pisces energy, for me, because I'm Virgo Swamsha, Pisces is opposite. It teaches me a lot, and it can be very painful, but it's very liberating. Now, again, I've said this a few times already. A final note worth mentioning is that some traditions consider it important to look at what's happening with the Swamsha sign itself in the D1, the Rashi, the birth chart. So not just strictly in the Navamsha chart. Technically, you could look at it in all the Varga charts. Jaimini himself gives some clues as to things worth considering when planets are found in the Swamsha sign in the birth chart. For example, he gives specific things. If you find Mars is in the Swamsha, you might be someone who works with metallurgy, with metals. You're like a smelter guy who, does this kind of thing, which all of his stuff are cryptic and has even deeper metaphors associated with it. I think the moon and Venus are both like a host or hostess type person when they fall into the Swamsha. So don't quote me on that, but this is an example of how deep running these things can be with the Swamsha. Now, this is just to give a brief overview of how to find your Swamsha. Again, I'm going to say this now. If you're interested, really, and if you haven't seen the original video, where we talk about how to calculate the Swamsha, you can find that video on my channel. We talk about how to take any planet, you find its Navamsha position, the portion of 9. Nav means 9, and an Amsha is a portion. So you're taking the 30 degrees, splitting it into 9 pieces, and which of those 9 pieces a planet falls in is going to show where the Navamsha is. Again, check out that video for more on that. But in this case, this is just showing an example. If we have Jupiter at 25 degrees Gemini, that's technically the 8th Navamsha. Now, what you do is you count up that many, whatever Navamsha it is, you count up that many Amshas from the cardinal sign of the birth sign's element. In this case, we have Jupiter in Gemini in the 8th Navamsha of Gemini. So what you're going to do is, in the Navamsha chart, you count up from the cardinal sign of the birth sign. In this case, Gemini is an air sign. So you take that Jupiter, you count 8 signs from Libra, which is the cardinal air sign. And what you get is this Jupiter, when you count up from Libra 8 spaces, 1, 2, Libra being the first, Scorpio being the second, Sag being the third, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, Taurus. Taurus is the 8th sign from Libra. So this Jupiter at 25 degrees of Gemini falls into the Navamsha of Taurus. Right? Now, what if we make that Jupiter the Atmakaraka? It's the planet with the highest degrees in the chart. The Navamsha position of the Atmakaraka is what we call the Swamsha. Right? Now, if this Jupiter, now it's got the little blue Atmakaraka sign there. So if this Jupiter is the Atmakaraka, it's falling at 25 degrees of Gemini, which is the 8th Navamsha. That means that this Jupiter falling into Taurus in the Navamsha chart, Taurus becomes the Swamsha. And that Swamsha is going to be important throughout the whole chart. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Now again, this is a very important symbol. It's called the Navamsha wheel. You can email me if you like, and I can send you a copy of this just so you can have it, or you can just pause this video and digest it for yourself. It's basically you're going to count from this wheel, from the cardinal point of the birth element of the planet, and you're going to count up however many amshas it is from the cardinal point and going around to find the position of your planet in the Navamsha. Again, check out the previous video on how to calculate the Swamsha to explain that more. So now we're here, we know how to calculate our Swamsha, so what's it all about? Here are some little tweaks that I use and that can generally be understood to give some relief, positivity, and luck, or the opposite, in our journey of experiencing the Swamsha. The Swamsha, after all, is a position that permeates all of the Vargas, including the birth chart. So let's begin at looking at A. So I've got a few of these options. With modification number 1, this is very simple. We're looking at the synergy of the Atmakaraka planet and the Swamsha sign. Very simple. If the Atmakaraka, in this case we had the example of Jupiter. It's in the Navamsha chart and it's in the sign of Taurus. If the Atmakaraka's Navamsha position, like this Jupiter Atmakaraka in Taurus, if it's in good dignity, then that's a positive thing. That's a good synergy. If the Lord of the Swamsha is a natural friend to the Atmakaraka, is what we're looking for here. Now in this example, Atmakaraka Jupiter fell into the Navamsha of Taurus, so it's a Taurus Swamsha. The Jupiter Atmakaraka actually has Venus for an enemy, and Venus rules Taurus. So we would consider Taurus Swamsha. Taurus is an incompatible Swamsha for Jupiter Atmakaraka. Right? Jupiter is one of the fire and water planets. So it does better in fire and water signs. In this earthy sign of Taurus, it's kind of getting swallowed by Venus. You know, we could just to break down what you'd expect there. This happens all the time, and don't worry if you have an incompatible Swamsha. This isn't, we're going to talk about how the Atmakaraka can't hate itself. But in this case, Jupiter Atmakaraka wants to be philosophical. It wants to kind of tread lightly on planet Earth. But this is not Makaraka Jupiter that wants to tread lightly on Earth, but the Taurus Swamsha soul needs to tread deeply in relationships. And this Taurus Swamsha is going to, no matter what planet is the Atmakaraka, it's going to experience the pain and the joy of having relationships, having grounded relationships, having meaningful material livelihood and connection with people, all stuff which Jupiter doesn't care so much about. There will be, it'll find its own nuance, because that's how the Atmakaraka works. But there is an incompatibility here that is to be understood and reckoned with. It's basically, take the Atmakaraka, you want it to be with a friend in its exaltation point or its own sign. Those are the most compatible points, right? So that was A. Now let's look at B, and this is the overall strength of the Atmakaraka in the Rashi chart. So this is B. What's the overall strength of the Atmakaraka? You want to look at its Shadbala. This is like the stuff that we would, this is just how well is the Atmakaraka doing in the birth chart. Shadbala, dignity, Lajatati of Ashtas, and all of Ashtas. Friendly and benefic aspects, aspects from friends, benefic planets. Or if it's got malefics, it's going to harm it. Positive yogas, yoga power, etc., etc. So it looks like, for some reason, a part of my presentation is getting eaten somehow. There we go. That was a little weird. So in this example, just for an example, we have, this is the birth chart, the Rashi chart. Now, this on the right side is the Navamsha chart. Now, to keep it simple, we have Jupiter exalted in the sign of Cancer in the Navamsha chart. So that's a happy Jupiter. The Jupiter is exalted in the sign of Cancer in the Navamsha. It's doing well there. But the flower of the Jupiter exalted is standing on the roots of the birth chart. The Rashi chart is the seed. You can have a very good destiny fruit and flower, but it's only going to do as well as what's described in the birth chart. Here in this case, the Jupiter is in the sign of Capricorn because this is an Aries rising. Capricorn is up here in the 10th house. And so Jupiter's debilitated in Capricorn, not its happiest dignity. And it's conjunct Saturn. Saturn is strong in its own sign of Capricorn. And Saturn starves any planet that it's with, and it's a malefic. So that Jupiter's getting bruised up. It's probably happy to be in the 10th house, and there's other things that could be given this Jupiter strength. But this is an example of how all this stuff is really causing a choking of what's expected from the Swamsha. Because remember, this is a Jupiter Atmakaraka. This is the highest degree planet in this person's chart, in the sign of Capricorn. It would be in the 7th Navamsha, which is the 7th from Capricorn, which is Cancer. I digress. This Jupiter Atmakaraka has Cancer in the Navamsha. That means Cancer is the Swamsha. So Cancer for this person would be very important. But Jupiter, the Atmakaraka, is not doing as well in the birth chart. So it's going to choke its ultimate capacities a little bit. So the overall strength of the Atmakaraka in the birth chart is an important dimension of what to expect from the Swamsha. Now C is the auspicious houses. So I'm going to put this up here. Option C is when we have auspicious houses ruling the Atmakaraka and the Swamsha as well in the birth chart, the Rashi chart. So this would show a harmony with the rising sign Lord, with the Atmakaraka and its Swamsha. Now this is an example of a mixed bag in this example. We usually want the Atmakaraka, it's ideal when it's ruling houses 1, 5, or 9, somewhere along the line. Sometimes the angles. We also would like the Swamsha to be one of these positive houses, because this means the rising sign, which is such an important part of our physical experience and karma on Earth. The rising sign, we want it to be in harmony with the Atmakaraka. We want it to be friendly to the Atmakaraka and to the Swamsha, ideally, to the Swamsha Lord. So this is a simple example with Pisces rising. Let's imagine we had Mars as the Atmakaraka. Mars is friendly with Jupiter, the rising sign. You could expect this from any planet that is ruling the 1st, the 5th, or the 9th house. It's probably going to be friendly to the rising sign. It's not always true, but in this case it is. Mars rules the auspicious 9th house of Scorpio, and Mars also rules the neutral 2nd house of Aries. The 9th house is the stronger point. It's a trine house. Scorpio is of the same nature of Pisces, so of course there's harmony there. So this Atmakaraka is naturally in harmony with the rising sign. Mars is friends with Jupiter as well. Jupiter rules Pisces. Now, let's imagine if this Atmakaraka, Mars, was placed in the Navamsha of Virgo. This would make this person a Virgo Swamsha. Now, Virgo is ruled by Mercury, who's an enemy to Pisces rising. It's considered an inauspicious house lord to Pisces rising. So if you put Mars in the Navamsha of Virgo, then this would be a Virgo Swamsha person. Mars also has some incompatibility with Virgo, but most importantly, Virgo is the exact opposite of Pisces. Most times, the 7th house has difficulty for the rising sign. So to have the 7th house as your Swamsha can be, usually it's a bit difficult. Not always terribly. So this would bring some tension, but remember though that the Atmakarka can't hate itself. Now, we're going to say more about this point, which is the Atma can't hate itself. But I want you to know, if you're wondering, like, Pisces rising, you'll notice, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 houses for Pisces rising are considered auspicious. They're conducive to goodness for Pisces. How do you know that and what defines that? You can check out more of my masterclass series on the rising signs if you want to learn more about these auspicious house lord dynamics. So you just look up Aries rising, ascendant, how to rock astrology, Taurus rising, ascendant, Gemini rising, ascendant. Yes, there's these very long ones, and in there I've broken each video up so you can see what makes the house lords. General house lord auspiciousness rules. I highly recommend that if you want to check that out. Now, an important point. The Atma can't hate itself. And, the Atma is the soul. More to the point, the soul can't hate itself, even in a state of worldly tension. What does this mean? It's, the fish, if you take it out of the water, it's a fish out of water, but it's not intrinsically bad. Even when the fish is out of water, it's struggling in the world, it's still working through the karma of being a fish. Even a fish out of water is learning the virtues of being a fish when it is out of its natural place. So we can't read an incompatible Atmakaraka or Swamsha in the same way that we read a lot of things in the birth chart. The birth chart often shows things that are just, there's difficulty here. If your Atmakaraka is under stress, bad dignity, incompatible with the Swamsha or rising sign, your Atmakaraka learns lessons from those positions. This gives you unique strengths to navigate the world effectively. Now, it's still, there can be pain with the Atmakaraka, just like with everything in astrology. But there's a secret knowledge, a wisdom, because this is the self. There's great self-realization that can come from the Atmakaraka, no matter how it's placed. So embrace it. Embrace the Atmakaraka in the birth chart, in its own sign, its Rashi sign. Embrace the Swamsha of the Atmakaraka, all its aspects, strengths, and yogas. There will always be a wellspring of vitality and nuanced wisdom there with the Atmakaraka's birth sign and its Swamsha sign. Somewhere amidst the dust, there is wisdom there. It's the wisdom of the self, and that is the greatest place that you can come from in moving and approaching how to live, is the self. Might want to keep that one under your hat. Now, there's 2 more particular points. Here we have point D, which is that the Atmakaraka, when it's in the same sign in the birth chart as it is in the Navamsha chart, we call it Vargatama. Some say this can even cancel out debilitation. I wouldn't quite go that far, but it does help to bring the best qualities of the Atmakaraka out. So this is a simple example. If you take the birth chart, you have Mercury at 28 degrees of Pisces. That's the final Navamsha of Pisces. After 2640, we're in the final Navamsha. Now, Pisces is a mutable sign. When you go in the last Navamsha of a mutable sign, you're going to be Vargatama. This Mercury is in Pisces in the birth chart, and it's in Pisces in the Navamsha chart. So we have Pisces Swamsha. Because the planet that's Pisces Swamsha is in the sign of Pisces in the birth chart, it's called Vargatama. There is again, it's a fish that is in water. The fish is feeling like it's in water. Even though this Mercury is debilitated, it doesn't necessarily cancel the debilitation of Mercury, because Mercury is debilitated in Pisces, right? it doesn't necessarily cancel debilitation, but this is a debilitated planet that learns very well how to make the best of its nature, even though it's in the opposite place that would be its strength. Mercury likes to be in the sign of Virgo. So when it's in the sign of Pisces, this is a very mystical Mercury here. By being Vargatama in the sign of Pisces, it has a profound and powerful strength and wisdom and knowledge and unique nuanced self-wisdom. If you have this position, feel it out for yourself and it should give you a little bit of hope. I have this position, as we're going to see when I show an example of my chart. Not with Mercury, but with Venus, as you'll see. Now we have the last one. This is just me showing more than anything how there are subtle, nuanced ways of reading the Navamsha chart that are classic Indian traditional jyotish stuff. A simple example is a Parivartana yoga and other such yogas in the Navamsha. This can be difficult to qualify without a trained eye. But this is just a simple example. In the birth chart, we have here a Mars that's Atmakaraka. It's in the sign of Taurus. It would be in the 7th Navamsha. So that puts it in Cancer, right? The 7th Navamsha of any earth sign is going to be in the Navamsha of Cancer. So since it's the Atmakaraka, Mars, that means Cancer is the Swamsha. So whatever is expected from Cancer with the moon, hopefully the moon is in a good position, and that'll tell us a bit more about the Swamsha. Now, Mars is debilitated in the sign of Cancer, but what's kind of a nice thing, it's interesting because we have debilitated Mars. That does damage the moon because two planets that are in Parivartana yoga kind of get absorbed in each other's energy. It's worth it here because what's happening is that the moon is pulling Mars up, but Mars is kind of pulling the moon down. But the Atmakaraka is the one that you would want to pull up because the Atmakaraka is the centrifugal soul. So Parivartana yoga is when you see one planet is in one planet's sign, and then that ruler of that sign is also in that planet's sign. The moon is in Mars's sign, and Mars is in the moon's sign. Even though Mars is debilitated, it's getting kind of helped out here in the Navamsha chart. Now that's just a very simple, small example of how these positive things can happen, especially with a friend, is when they tend to go well. So, yeah, let's take one last look, everybody. To end this trip, it's already been a long video. This has been us describing the Swamsha. This is some ways of understanding how to use it, how to deal with it. Let's take one last little look. We're going to look and see how my Navamsha, my Atmakaraka, Venus, is positioned to see a little bit of what it looks like in the birth chart and what it looks like in the Navamsha chart to see how some of these things play out. I'm happy to display it because I think it's a cool example of some of the positive things that can come even in a difficult position. And I think I'm pretty cool, so don't feel bad if you've got stuff like what I've got happening in your chart. So Venus Atmakaraka is at 29 degrees 53 of the sign of Virgo in my chart. So Venus is easily the highest degree planet in my chart. I'm a Leo rising. Venus falls into the second house of Virgo. Now it's debilitated in the sign of Virgo. But of course it is at 29 degrees of an earth sign. Remember what I said. When you're at the last Navamsha of a mutable sign, you're going to be Vargatama, always. Because the ninth Navamsha of any earth sign, remember when you look back at our funky little thing here, you have to excuse me moving around. Now, we're going to take the ninth Navamsha, which is the very last Navamsha of an earth sign. If you count up in the Navamsha wheel from Capricorn, because you take the element of the birth sign of a planet, and you count up that many amshas from the cardinal element of that birth sign. In this case, Virgo is an earth sign. So we're going to count up 9 from Capricorn. Capricorn is 1, Aquarius is 2, Pisces is 3, Aries is 4, Taurus is 5, Gemini is 6, Cancer is 7, Leo is 8, Virgo is 9. So Virgo is the 9th Navamsha, right? So my Venus in the sign of Virgo at the end degrees, at the 29th degree of Virgo, falls into Virgo in the Navamsha chart. Now, I don't know, I'm not sure about my exact rising signs Navamsha position, so I've just given this an Aries rising, just so we can see Venus in my chart is in the Navamsha of Virgo, right? Now, there's funny other things going on here, you know. What's probably, while we're looking at my Navamsha, we can see it's Vargatama. It's in the same sign, Virgo, in the birth chart as it is in the Navamsha chart. Now, Venus in my chart is involved in a Parivartana yoga with its friend Mercury in this Navamsha chart. It'd be nice if one of these days I'm going to really dig in and I've done birth rectifications. I'm still not confident with them. But if I get a good birth rectification, I'll know what my rising Navamsha sign is. And then I'd be able to say what kind of exchange is going on between Mercury and Venus here. But I digress. That's very deep and nuanced. You don't necessarily need to get that nuanced. But it's still interesting that Mercury and Venus are trading each other's signs. Mercury, which rules Virgo, is in the sign of Taurus, ruled by Venus. And Venus is in the sign of Virgo, ruled by Mercury. So that tends to be positive. But Parivartanas aren't always positive. Keep that in mind. These guys are friends, so it's generally conveyed as a good thing. Helping to clean up my junky Venus in Virgo. Now, what else is happening with the sign of Virgo? Because we know Virgo is the Swamsha. So what else is happening in the sign of Virgo in my chart that can give us more of an understanding of the systemic energy that's working through my soul sign, which is Virgo? Well, we have 2 benefics there. That is a really nice thing. 2 benefics in the second house of Virgo is going to help the house of Virgo. And so when there's positive things going to your Swamsha like this, it helps the Swamsha have what it needs and do what it needs to do. 2 benefics there in Virgo is nice. Now, for anybody who knows Vedic astrology, the one ugly thing happening here is that Jupiter's getting pretty beat up. Thankfully, it's close to the rising sign. It's got some good yoga power. But ultimately, being in the placement that it is, it's starved by the planet Venus. Thankfully, not too bad, because when a planet's debilitated, it can't do as much damage. But Venus is starving Jupiter, and Jupiter is also not happy in the sign of Virgo. Jupiter has Mercury for an enemy. So it's starved by both its enemies, not in the best dignity. Now, Jupiter being starved by Venus is happening in Virgo. That's the Swamsha. And this harms the indications of the Swamsha. So if you have any planets, any malefic things going on with any planet in the Swamsha, even though Venus is happy, Venus is being delighted by Jupiter, but Jupiter is being starved by Venus. And I feel that systemically through my soul. It's something I have to work through with my father, with my masculine energy. I'm always working on the heart. I always have to make sure that I don't get so distracted with the passions of Venus that I lose my spiritual intent. I have to seek good guides, and I have to listen to them. Sometimes my guru types figures can get frustrated with me. This is all the pains of having of Jupiter and where it is. Now, if this was anywhere else in my chart, it might not be as big a deal, but I feel it deeply because it's in my Swamsha. So this is an example Look at what's happening in your Swamsha. What planets are delighted by their friends? What planets are starved by their enemies? What kind of malefics are in the house? And also look at the planet ruling. In this case, Mercury rules Virgo for me. Now, it's another thing that Mercury is getting starved by the moon in my chart. All of these things matter. All of these things count. So look at the things that are helping the house and the house lord, the planet that rules that house. These are all going to give clues as to things that are going to give you a vision of how to understand your Swamsha and what kind of pains, what kind of joys and delights can be expected from it. Of course, my name is Dustin Cormier. You can email me by going to astrology@dustincormier.com, or you can check out my website. And if you want to email me, you can ask me about these things. I'm open to helping people out and talk about it and discuss it. And if you really want to get the guts of it, you can set up a session with me, and I will discuss what's going on with your Swamsha, especially if you want to know about your Swamsha and can't figure it out. Feel free to give me an email. But if you've gone down this rabbit hole, you've seen some things, you're worried this thing might be a bad thing, or it's like, there could be a good thing here and I want to discuss it, I'm here to talk. And also, join my email list at dustincormier.com/subscribe so you can see my astrology books that I'm going to be coming out with, as well as my poetry books that I'm going to be coming out with in good due time. Thank you very much, folks. I hope that this was enjoyable. I hope it was illuminating. Keep your eyes out and, watch for more in this series of the Tropical Vedic Big Three. We're going to discuss the Atmakarika, and we're going to discuss the nakshatra, and then finally we're going to see some examples of how we can kind of wrap all three of them together into a fun, fad-ish little package. Let's have some fun with it. I'm Dustin Cormier, folks. Shoot myself in the foot. That's my ugly Jupiter. These big three, as much as I call it a fad, they are something worth looking at in your chart. I invite you to check for yourself. Find your Atmakarika, Swamsha, your moon's nakshatra, and see how they feel and they fit for yourself. Thanks for watching, folks. I'll see you guys on the other side.